The biggest enemy every trader faces isn't the market. The nights you wish you could forget. There's a moment every trader has lived through, whether they admit it or not. It's when you're sitting in front of your screen at midnight, the cold blue glow lighting up your exhausted face, scrolling back through your own trade history. Not to learn anything, but to torture yourself with what you already know too well. You remember this morning's trade. A setup so clean you actually brag to yourself in your head. This one's a lock. Solid analysis, a clean entry, proper position size. You went in with rare confidence. But minutes later, price pulled back a little, nowhere near your stop loss, just a normal retracement anyone who's read a single price action book would recognize. Still, your hand moved. Not from logic. From a reflex you didn't even know you had until it fired. You closed the trade. 3 minutes later, price bounced right back onto the path you'd mapped out from the start. It ran straight to your target, without you in it. You're not angry at the market. You're angry at yourself. And that anger needs somewhere to go. You open a second trade. Not because of a new signal, because of a dull ache in your chest telling you, get back what you just lost, right now. You double your position size, not because the odds are better, but because you need a win to numb what just happened. Price moves against you. You watch the red number grow, and a thought creeps in that somehow feels reasonable. Just pull the stop loss, give it a little more room. It'll come back. You remove it. You tell yourself this is conviction in your analysis, not fear of admitting you were wrong. It doesn't come back. Plunges straight down, swallowing an entire week of profit in under 15 minutes. And here's the most painful part of the whole story. You don't stop. You open a third trade, a fourth, a fifth. No technical analysis left. Just a compulsion to claw back what was lost, as fast as possible, ignoring every risk rule you wrote for yourself just 1 week earlier, on a clear-headed night, full of resolve. That night, you shut your laptop in silence. You don't tell anyone. You don't show anyone your P&L. You convince yourself you're the only one broken enough to do this to yourself, while other traders online keep flexing massive wins, as if the market is easy for everyone except you. If this story feels uncomfortably familiar, you are not alone. And more importantly, this isn't a story about your weakness. This is a story about how the human brain is wired, and once you understand the real mechanism behind it, you'll have the single most powerful tool to break the cycle: awareness. Why it keeps happening. It's not weakness, it's wiring. Stop for a second and ask yourself, if all of this, cutting winners early, holding losers, revenge trading, pulling your stop loss, sizing up recklessly, were simply lack of discipline, why do you know exactly what you're doing wrong the moment you're doing it and still can't stop? The answer is, this was never a willpower problem. This is the result of 3 biological and psychological mechanisms that can be named, measured, and have been studied extensively. Mechanism 1. Fear. Your brain treats a losing trade like a predator attack. Picture your ancestors standing in the middle of a savanna, hearing a rustle in the bushes. The ones who survived weren't the ones who stopped to calmly analyze whether it was actually a predator. They were the ones who reacted instantly, heart racing, muscles tensing, ready to run. Your brain today still runs on that exact same hardware. And here's what's remarkable. Researchers at MIT had participants hold positions that were moving against them, then measured their brain activity. The resulting patterns were nearly identical to responses triggered by a real physical threat. Spiking heart rate, flooding cortisol, full activation of the fight-or-flight response. A red number on a screen, biologically speaking, gets processed by your brain almost the same way as an actual predator closing in. This is exactly why you cut winners early. The moment a profitable trade starts to pull back, a very primitive part of your brain screams, lock it in before it disappears. The same instinct that makes you grip food tightly before someone else can grab it. And this is also why perfectionism, which seems harmless on the surface, is so dangerous. Behavioral psychologists have pointed out that waiting for the perfect setup in trading is, more often than not careful selectivity at all. It's fear of being wrong, wearing a more respectable disguise called high standards. But perhaps the most important discovery comes from behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for his research on human decision-making under risk. He and his colleagues identified a phenomenon called loss aversion, Humans feel the pain of a loss roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of an equivalent gain. In other words, losing $100 hurts far more than the happiness of gaining $100. This isn't a personal character flaw. It's evolutionary programming baked deep into the human species, built to help your ancestors survive famine and predators, not to help you win on a candlestick chart. Mechanism 2. Greed. Winning streaks create a dangerous illusion of invincibility. It sounds backwards, but the most dangerous moment in your trading journey isn't right after a painful loss. It's right after a winning streak. Researchers at the University of Chicago analyzed data from thousands of real trading accounts and found a troubling pattern. The probability of a trader taking impulsive, oversized positions relative to their plan rises sharply immediately following consecutive wins. The reason behind that number lies in biology. Neuroscientist John Coates, a former Wall Street trader turned brain scientist, measured traders' testosterone levels throughout the day. What he found: traders on a winning streak showed noticeably elevated testosterone by the afternoon. And elevated testosterone doesn't just create confidence. It directly increases risk-taking behavior, producing a feeling close to invincibility. This is exactly why you size up right after a few consecutive wins with no signal telling you to. It's why you remove your stop-loss, convinced that this time you've finally cracked the market. And it's why, when you see someone online flexing a 200% winning trade, your own steady 5% weekly gain suddenly feels like a failure, even though it's actually the more sustainable path. The market, in the end, doesn't punish you for losing. It punishes you the moment you believe you've already won. Mechanism 3. Ego. When you're protecting your self-image instead of your account. This is the deepest and most dangerous layer because it hides the most skillfully, usually disguised as discipline, conviction in the strategy, or patiently waiting for a reversal. Neuroscience explains clearly what happens inside your head after a string of consecutive losses. Your amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive, while your prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational decision-making and impulse control, becomes suppressed. In plain terms, after a few losses in a row, your brain literally loses part of its capacity to think clearly. You are not fully yourself anymore. This is exactly why revenge trading happens. You're no longer following your plan, you're acting out of pain and a need to get even with the market, as if it owes you something. It's also why you hold a losing position until it wrecks your entire account. Not because you genuinely believe in a miraculous reversal, but because admitting you were wrong is something your ego cannot allow. And it's why you keep jumping from one trading system to another the moment it stops working temporarily. Because the feeling of, I'm not in control of what's happening, is unbearable to your ego, so it pushes you to act, even when that action only makes things worse. One professional trader, describing the moment he hit rock bottom, put it this way: he realized he was no longer trading his own strategy. He was trading his own wounded ego. Why knowing isn't enough, and what actually creates change. Here's an uncomfortable truth you need to face. Simply reading this far, simply understanding the mechanism, will not automatically stop you from repeating the mistake tomorrow. Because there's a paradox waiting for you just ahead, and if you don't understand it, you'll accidentally turn the solution itself into a brand new trap. That paradox is this: the harder you try to control an emotion by suppressing it, the stronger it becomes. Psychologists call this ironic process theory. Try it right now. Tell yourself, don't think about an elephant. What just popped into your head? An elephant. The exact same thing happens when you repeat don't revenge trade, don't revenge trade, don't revenge trade after 3 losses in a row, and then you revenge trade harder than ever. This is why professional trading firms don't teach their traders to suppress emotion. They teach them to observe it. The difference sounds small, but it's everything. Suppression is resistance. Observation is awareness. When you resist an emotion, you hand it more power. When you simply notice it, that's loss aversion talking. That's my wounded ego talking. You create a small gap between the emotion and the action. And it's inside that fragile gap that conscious choice actually exists. That is also the exact place where self-sabotage, for the first time, loses its grip. The solution: breaking the cycle, step by step. For fear, name it the moment it shows up. Next time you feel your hand drifting toward the close button, while price has only pulled back slightly. Stop for exactly 1 second and say out loud, "This is loss aversion talking, not my plan." That single sentence is often enough to engage the rational part of your brain and pull you out of pure reflex. For greed, get more suspicious exactly when you feel most confident. Make this a non-negotiable rule. After every 3 consecutive winning trades, automatically reduce your position size on the next trade, no matter how strong your confidence feels. The more you win, the more caution you need, not because you're pessimistic, but because you know exactly what's happening inside your own body at that moment. For ego, install a circuit breaker and stop suffering alone. Give yourself one hard, non-negotiable rule. After 2 consecutive losses in a single day, you stop, step away from the screen, and don't open another position until your emotional state has returned to baseline. This isn't punishment. It's an honest acknowledgement that the version of you right after 2 losses is no longer capable of making good decisions. Just as important, find someone to talk to about what you're going through. A fellow trader, a community, a mentor. Isolation is the perfect breeding ground for ego and shame to grow strongest. Because when you suffer alone, your brain writes stories convincing you that you're the only one failing this way. But the truth is, every great trader you admire has sat in front of a screen with this exact same feeling. The moment you say your mistake out loud to someone else, that negative story starts losing its power. The root solution: stop trying to be more disciplined. Change who you're becoming. This is the most important idea in this entire journey. You cannot fight fear, greed, and ego forever using willpower alone. Willpower is a finite resource, while these 3 mechanisms are a permanent part of being human. What actually creates lasting change isn't trying not to cut winners early anymore. It's deciding, I am someone who lets winners run. Not, I'm trying not to revenge trade. But, I am someone who knows how to stop the moment emotion starts taking over. The difference between those 2 statements is the difference between fighting your instincts every single day and those instincts, over time, no longer defining who you are. The painful cycle you just recognized yourself in, cutting winners early, holding losers, revenge trading, pulling stop losses, sizing up in a fog of invincibility, isn't proof that you're not good enough to trade. It's proof that you're human, carrying a brain evolved to survive a world completely different from financial markets. But precisely because this mechanism can be named, measured, and explained by science, it can also be recognized, observed, and gradually rewritten. The market always reflects exactly who you really are. Your next trade isn't just a position on a chart. It's your answer to the question, who are you choosing to become?